Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to join me on this webinar. This is a topic I'm specifically very passionate about, and that is education and finances and how the two often have a very strong overlap because to give our children the best shot at at education, especially when they're navigating neurodiversity, can really be a very expensive journey. And if there's anything that can be claimed back, it's critical that one does so. I also want to thank the leadership at the schools. Both campuses have been very, very helpful and have put out the webinar. And oftentimes we speak to schools, and you can tell when a school is puts their parent body front of mind and are happy to do anything to help the parent body, and that's definitely true for school peace of mind. So thank you to the school leadership. Also want to thank my colleague Jade who couldn't join us tonight uh, due to personal families stuff, but she put this together, and just want to thank her for that as well. So the topic of tonight's webinar is medical tax refunds, how medical rebates work, what can be claimed, who qualifies, and how at Stratfin we help families. Stratfin is we're a tax solution company headed by Ilan Rabinowitz. He's got about 20 years of tax experience, and we've carved out, besides for our regular tax practice, we've carved out specific angles to bring down uh, taxes. And one of the most attractive solutions at our company is definitely the medical tax back solution. So I want to go into a little bit of theory. And if you lose me in the theory, not to worry because the take home is very, very clear. But even in the theory, there's a lot of details that if you really understand them, can save you a lot of money. So bear with me, and I'm gonna try to be clear. Before I go into how medical conditions uh, really change the game when it comes to medical rebates, I just want to go into how medical rebates work without any medical conditions, how they work exactly, and just point out a few pointers that I've seen people missing out before we even talk about how medical conditions can change the game when it comes to medical rebates and can include school fees and many things like that. It's important to know just how rebates work in general. And that is as follows. Any South African taxpayer that incurs medical bills is entitled to a medical rebate. And that you get in when you do your tax return. So last tax year started in March 2025 and ended in Feb 2026. In end of June, beginning of July 2026, we all get a chance to do our tax return. Provisional tax pay is a little bit different, but very similar. And we can claim back a certain amount of those medical rebates. It's broken up into two sections. Section 6A of the Income Tax Act and Section 6B of the Income Tax Act. Your Section 6A is very, very straightforward, and the way it works is per member that you have on a medical aid, you get on average 300 Rand back every single month. So if you've got a family, say of four, 300 times 4 times 12, roughly about 14,000 Rand that you'll get back in your Section 6A of your uh, of your tax in your tax return when you do it at the end of the in June, July. Then your Section 6B. What happens over here is it's quite a complex formula. So I'll take into account how much you earn, what you spent on your medical aid, and what you spent on your out-of-pocket expenses. And they give you a percentage of that back as well. And this is once again, this is before there is a medical condition, before there's neurodiversity, which we're going to discuss all the different qualifying medical conditions and how they can really, really uh, increase the rebate. But already over here, it is so important to note the following 3 points. Number one is that if you are paying for someone else's medical aid, say you're paying for parents' medical aid or for a sibling's medical aid, and they're not on your you're not the main member of the medical aid, but you are paying for it. You are entitled to a medical rebate, and that's an opportunity that I see a lot of people missing out on. They're paying for their parents. They don't know that they can get a percentage of those expenses back, and therefore they don't submit that when they do the tax return, or they rely on auto assessment. Number two is, even though the medical aids are putting forward your tax certificate, your medical tax certificate to SARS, it's very important to make sure that you are indeed getting a medical rebate. Don't just trust a auto assessment. Make sure that you've gotten back your medical rebate. And that's also, whilst it's likely you're already getting it, always double check that. And number three, and this is very important, if one of the spouses is a taxpayer and the other spouse is not a taxpayer, make sure that the spouse that is a taxpayer is the one who's the main member of the medical aid, so that they can get the medical rebate. Because if you put it in the spouse that's not a taxpayer, being that this is a reclaim on your tax, you won't be able to get anything back unless you can prove to SARS that the taxpayer paid for it. But very important, make sure that the taxpayer is both the paying for it and preferably also the main member. And the last take home on this point is as follows. It's very important that every single medical expense that you incur, you you put that through to your medical aid. Even though oftentimes you know your medical aid is not going to cover. They never cover the psychologist, they never cover the play therapist or the occupational therapist or the speech therapist or over-the-counter medicine. And therefore you think, okay, why should I even submit it to the medical aid? And the reason to submit it to medical aid is because what that will do for you is the medical aid will act as your personal logbook of all your medical spend over the year. And they'll then submit that information to SARS with exactly how much you paid for your premium, how much you paid out of pocket, what they did cover, what they didn't cover, and you can get a percentage of that back. So that's already, before we go on to medical conditions and the impact that medical conditions has on this part of the Income Tax Act, very important to always submit everything to the medical aid. Now, what happens is as follows. If there's one person in the family that struggles in one of six categories on a moderate to severe level, SARS will now give you a different formula entirely, which we're going to discuss what that formula looks like. But before we do that, I want to go through all the different categories that SARS honor as a medical condition and will now give the taxpayer a much more favorable and bigger rebate. And even though I know this is for parents of kids mostly struggling with neurodiversity, I want to go through all the medical conditions because whilst some of them may not be directly affect someone in your family, but they can affect a friend or family member. And knowledge is key. The more you know about how taxes work, the more you can maximize on the tax rebate opportunities. So first, intellectual. Here you have all your neurodiversity, remedial learning, and anything that falls under that category. And a child is struggling moderately to severely. Moderate means that you're now seeking special schooling, specialized schooling, or extra assistance. Vision, if there's a moderate to severe problem with the vision, communication. Here you have your non-verbals, aparaxia, and really any barriers to communication where a person can't fully articulate what they're feeling, how they're feeling, what they want, and is now not managing to fully get by in their day-to-day activity because they can't fully communicate. Physical, here you can have, we've seen many successful cases of severe rheumatoid arthritis. We've seen sleep apnea qualify, cancer, obviously any mobility issues. In the mental health category, here we have anxiety, ADHD, depression, and anything else which falls under the mental health category. And lastly, hearing loss. Once again, it's very important that not any anxiety, not any ADHD, not any level of aparaxia or physical can qualify. It has to be affecting a person moderately to severely in their day-to-day life. Moderate as opposed to mild, but also moderate doesn't have to be severe. A lot of people make the mistake because SARS called us disabled or impaired. They think that unless someone is in a wheelchair, they won't qualify. And that's a big mistake because examples which SARS give is can't walk long distances. And they even say there, you're able to walk without assistive devices, but there's with a degree of difficulty. And similarly in intellectual, the examples which are brought, are not talking about something very severe. A moderate, if someone is moderately affected, will definitely qualify. Now, once we have someone in the family that qualifies, and even one person in the family, the next thing that happens is as follows. Number one, they'll now give you back 33% of your full medical aid and out-of-pocket expenses. So in your medical rebate, instead of getting just your Section 6A and a small percentage in your Section 6B, they'll now work out how much your entire medical aid came to, all those contributions, all the out-of-pocket expenses, and they'll give you back 33%. So for example, let's say we have a family that is paying, to keep numbers round, 10,000 Rand a month in their medical aid contribution. My family personally, we pay about 9,000 Rand and we're on a hospital plan. So 10,000 Rand is quite common actually. And what will happen now is that 10,000 Rand times 12, so that's comes to 120,000 Rand. So there's another 2,000 Rand out of pocket expenses, another 24,000 Rand. This family's now spent 144,000 Rand on their medical aid and on their out of pocket expenses, and it should all show in their medical aid tax certificate. What will then happen is they'll get 33% of that back, which is roughly about 48,000 Rand, which they can already reclaim, as opposed to the 15,000, 16,000 Rand, which most people are getting. The second thing that happens, and this is where really the magic comes in, is even though schooling, education is not a medical spend, but what SARS will say is that schooling in South Africa on average is about 1,000 Rand a month. If you are sending your child to a brilliant school like Peace of Mind, and now your school fees is now more than the average school fee of 1,000 Rand a month, perhaps the school fees at Peace of Mind is 6,000 Rand, let's just say, there's now a 5,000 Rand difference between what school commonly should cost and what you are paying. So I also now view that 5,000 Rand times 12 as a medical spend, and you can now claim back 33% of that 60,000 Rand. So we've just bumped this family, which started off at 14,000 Rand or 16,000 Rand or something like that, and we've bumped them from 16 to 44 just on the medical aid and out-of-pocket expenses. And then we bumped them with a further 20 in the back on the school fees, coming to about 65,000 Rand they can get back in their when they do their tax return. And that sort of number can really change the game when you're trying to give your child the best education that they need and can really do so well with. Another bit of magic that happens is travel to school. Travel to school is not viewed as a medical expense commonly, but if the school is further than 10 kilometers away and your child is attending that school because they need that extra help, SARS will now say the travel to the school is also a medical spend, which you can now get back some 33% of that as well. How you work out what the expense of travel is, as parents, if we had to start calculating and keeping a logbook of every time we drove to school, honestly, I think most parents would not manage to do so. We have enough on our plate. And therefore, what we've seen that works is as follows. This is a great little trick. And that is what you can do is you can take your route from your home to the school and you screenshot that on Google or on Waze, Google Maps or Waze. You times that by the days of the year, back to school, back from school, to school, back from school, and there you have your total amount of kilometers. You go into the AA website, you put in your car, you work out the AA rate, and you submit that to SARS as your logbook. And we've seen that to work. And that's a practical way to really maximize travel when travel is almost impossible to do unless you have a hack like this. Other common examples which come to mind of things which can be claimed as a medical spend. Obviously, if there's any specific toys, or a great example when my when we went on holiday in December, and our speech therapist wasn't going to see my child for like 5, 6 weeks. So they didn't want her to fall behind. So what the speech therapist advised was to get this very expensive software. And now with the software, I also need an iPad. So I got the speech therapist to write a letter explaining what software I needed, the iPad that I needed, and now those purchases, the iPad and the software, I can also get back 33% off. Obviously, facilitators, scribes, anything that's related to the medical condition, you can get back 33% off. And you know, oftentimes people get a little overwhelmed with all the different things that they can claim. And I think the main things where you see the big money coming back is really on the medical aid contribution, which a lot of people are missing, and on the school fees. If you have those two, you really are already winning. Everything else is a bonus, and don't let the bonuses distract you from the main prize. And if you can't manage to collect where you have the statements for the toys and it's mixed with other take a lot orders and all of that, my advice personally is not to get stuck on that and just focus on where the real returns are coming in, and that's the medical aid contribution, the school fees. Obviously, if you can get the bonuses, that is definitely a bonus. Um, in total, it's very hard to say a total, and it's important to note that obviously you can never claim back more money than you've paid SARS over the year. So, say you're on a salary and the company's submitting tax for you every single month. If the tax you're paying comes to less than the 33% of all your medical spend, you can never get back more than that. And this is where it's important to also make sure that the person spending the money is the higher taxpayer. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more now. And yeah, this is really where at Stratfin, because we specialize in the space, we've worked out that there's three things which are the barriers to entries, which we've simplified and made very accessible for families. Number one is there's an opportunity if you haven't claimed the last few years, tax year 25, tax year 24, tax year 23. If you get onto it quick, we could do a backdated claim and get back 23, 24, and 25 before we even do 2026. And that's a real win, because even if your child only joined the school in the beginning of this year, there was still the medical aid and all the other expenses which you could probably claim back on. And already over here, you can in many cases we've seen that if a claim is done right and you claim back for the last 3 years, you can get an entire year of school fees recovered within 6 to 8 weeks of engagement and us handling your claim. Number two is on the point of that you can't claim back more money than you've paid SARS. What we always do before we submit a claim, we always have a holistic approach, and we see exactly what mom's earning, what dad's earning is, and then we assess where can we get the more favorable outcome. And oftentimes we've reversed what's happened in the one spouse to get a more favorable outcome in a different spouse. And I've seen cases where just by changing things like that, we save families 100,000 Rand plus, which is really something to not overlook. Lastly, because the process can be very uh, daunting, you need to get an RTRDD form, you need to get the school fees, you need to get the doctor to sign the form. The doctors are often very unsure where to sign. Then SARS aren't happy with the qualification of the doctor. They're not happy with the GP. They want this, they want that. There's a lot of details which need to come together to get the claim done right and get it done right first time. And obviously, a no is harder to change into a yes. So you really do want to get that claim done right first time. So what we do is any client that we take on, we assign a client manager who's mandated to take that admin headache and really minimize it by 90%, which we can do in office, and we can prepare the SARS form for you. We can write a letter to the doctor. We can revise the form and make sure that everything's done correctly. We can we can point you to where to find your medical aid tax certificates and make sure that the whole stack is ready for when it goes to SARS, it's done right first time. And then what we do, you also need to have comparative school fees. It's another detail which you need to get right. Um, Comparative school fees of the school fees you are paying as opposed to the school fees in your area, and obviously look for the cheapest school in your area to get that difference. And then what we do is we assign an account manager who's then dedicated to getting it over the line and play that ping pong with SARS until we get it over the line. You know, oftentimes claims can go by quickly, and 6 weeks and SARS have returned, we've recovered the money, and sometimes it can take 11 months and sometimes it can take 2 weeks. It really isn't in our control, but our team is excellent at making sure that we get the most favorable outcome with the quickest time and make sure that, when SARS come back with their correspondence, that we deal with it timelessly and we give them exactly what they want when they want it so we can get that claim over the line. So that's really what we do at Stratfin. It's one of our favorite services that we do offer. Obviously, any we also very happy just to provide information. If you want assistance and you want to do the claim yourself, you're welcome to do so. Uh, our fee, if we do the claim, is 20% of success. So we don't have any upfront fees. And if we do have a successful claim, you keep 80% and we invoice you 20%. We also you also don't need to leave your accountant or your current tax practitioner. We're happy to work alongside them and make sure that that claim comes over the line correctly. And yeah, like I mentioned, we've got quite a large team. There's about 15 of us in the office. We all are uh, very knowledgeable in this area, and we're just happy to help, happy to assist. You're welcome to contact myself, Jade, or the office number. There will be a WhatsApp which will go out after this webinar. If you want assistance, you can just click a button on the WhatsApp message which will go out, and someone on the team will be in touch with you during work hours. So that's it from me. I'm hoping that there are questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to give a minute for anyone who'd like to post a question, or if you'd like to talk, you can even talk. Yeah, you just make that request on your side, but otherwise, I'm watching the chat. Okay, so important point. The question is there a cap? Is there a cap on the 33%? There's no cap. We've seen claims where we get back 100,000 Rand in 1 year. So I may have not been so clear, but it is important to know that there's no cap on 33%. The only cap is if you haven't paid that much tax. So you obviously can't claim more tax than you've paid in that tax year, and that's the only cap. Any other questions? Here we go. Do we also work on unresolved cases? Yes, we do. Um, yeah, we can definitely help with the unresolved case. I'm assuming where it went wrong is SARS were requesting a clinical psychologist or whatever it is, and that's something where we actually work with a team of psychologists which can assist with that as well. But whatever the case is, you're welcome to be in touch with us offline and tell us where things didn't work out. Seshni, if you can share, if you can ask.
So it's not Station, it's a husband, so the same thing somewhat.
Okay, how's it?
Hope you
How's
can
it?
hear me.
Yes.
The a government worker, so she gets subsidized on her medical aid. Because of that, then we've got the medical aid with her, but I then pay all the expenses for the kitty. Does that make a difference on how we claim it?
Brilliant question. I'm actually curious to see if your wife gets the subsidy as a fringe benefit. If she's getting it as a fringe benefit, then that means she's paying tax on that medical aid.
Mhm.
And even though she's getting it for less, we could potentially do a claim there. And then what I would advise is to actually do two claims. Do a claim in your wife's name and
Hmm.
do a claim in your name, two separate claims actually.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Yes, so she
Yeah.
does, just to give you some more info, she does get subsidized for it. I think the way it is, she pays one part, they pay two parts of medical aid.
Yeah, if my best guess is that she's getting it as a fringe benefit, in which
Mm,
case that's a taxable benefit, and we could definitely claim against that. So it sounds like there's like two nice claims to be made, both in your name and in your wife's name.
okay, perfect. Thank you, Donald.
Great. Okay, there's another question here. Um, this is an excellent question. If your company is giving you a travel allowance, can I still claim for the travel to the school expense? Um, what I would say is, and I would double check this uh, with my director. He's got, I think, 18 years of experience over me, so I would double check this. But I would say that, your company is giving you a travel allowance. That's one thing. You can now, that travel allowance normally won't cover all of your travel. And if you now can prove to SARS that you're also traveling for school, which that the company shouldn't be giving you a travel allowance for that. And even if it's not so clear what it is or isn't for, to me it sounds like it's two different benefits, and you would be able to still do a travel claim. That's a really excellent question. Okay, does groceries also considered when claimed for expenses and also for the helper? So groceries, unfortunately, does not qualify, and this is like a very unique food. Like there are cases which we've seen, like a child with uh, like severe autism, and now they need very specific food and something like that. Then that's something which could qualify. But if it's not groceries, which is linked directly to the medical condition, then that wouldn't qualify. But important to note, vitamins and supplements and all things which can be justified as helping with the medical condition can definitely qualify. Okay, another question in over here. We own a family business and the company pays our medical aid. Would this be an issue? So that's an excellent question. Once again, it's important to check how it's set up. Is the company paying the medical aid and listing you as a taxpayer, and you're getting as a fringe benefit? Then we would be able to claim. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to claim on the medical aid, but you could still claim on the school fees, and that could be another opportunity there. Any other questions, parents? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to share the knowledge that I'm so passionate about. And if your children are sleeping, have a wonderful evening. If your children aren't sleeping yet, wishing you good luck.